My name is Michael Dwyer, and I'm with Rochester Writers. Once again, Rochester Writers and the Rochester Hills Public Library have teamed up to host the annual Rochester Author Fair, now in its fifth year. We're hosting 20 authors in person at the library in downtown Rochester on Saturday, November 25th from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. These short videos offer you a chance to meet each of the 20 authors. And right now, we're meeting Peter Werbe. Hey, Peter.
Hi, Michael. Thank you so much.
I almost flubbed my beginning by saying eat the authors, and it must be because I just got done talking to you about the name of the book before we got started. So your book is Eat the Rich and Other Interesting Ideas.
That's right. It's a collection of essays, mostly that appeared in the Fifth Estate publication, which is a 58-year-old Detroit-based political magazine. It goes back, obviously, to the 1960s.
Well, I know I've heard your name around the writing circles for a little bit, but I remember you back from radio days, and I think a lot of people will recognize your name. How did you move from radio to print? And give us a little bit of a backstory on Peter Werbe.
Well, I began, the backstory begins with the Fifth Estate newspaper that began in 1965, and I joined it probably late in 1966. So that's a while ago. So I was writing on a regular basis, and then WRIF decided that it needed some hip youth content, which I guess they thought I was and others were at the time back then. And so I sort of seamlessly moved into radio broadcasting, mostly doing talk radio, although I always was a DJ as well. So when I retired in 2016, and all of a sudden it's COVID and I'm staying at home, well, it just popped into my head that perhaps I could write a novel based on the experiences that I had in I've got to get the right century, 1967. So 1967 was, in my novels, a distillation, in a sense, of that whole generation. The riots, the anti-war stuff, the peace, drugs, the Grandy Ballroom, rock and roll, bomb plots. I'm probably leaving some things out. Oh, sex. Yeah, I forgot about that one. So it was easy. And the second book, which is Eat the Rich and Other Interesting Ideas, is a compilation, a selection of essays that I wrote over the decades, actually, and really are the same themes of having to do without the excitement that a novel can bring and the emotion that a novel can bring, but the same themes of race and equality and economic equity and war, sex. Why do I keep going back to that? I don't know.
It happens. It's why we're all here.
Yeah, exactly.
So fascinating ideas. And I apologize. I did not know so much about you that you started so early in the 60s with your Fifth Estate publications and the stories. And I remember the show on WRIF. I catch it. Was it Sunday evenings? Am I remembering that right?
Sunday evenings. Actually, it lasted for 48 years, making it the longest running phone-in talk show in radio history. But it was only a weekly show, so it doesn't get a lot of credit, although I guess I wasn't in it for the credit.
And it was on a music channel.
It was on WRIF. Yeah, WRIF Rocks Detroit. And it was wonderful because I got to speak essentially to a young rock and roll audience who usually didn't consider the subjects, ones that I mentioned in the book. In fact, both books were written in many ways with that audience in mind, although it, as it turned out, since it appears to be a memoir, which it has some roots in that, but it is fictionalized, it struck a real chord in people, much more than I expected. And it's now, in fact, its third printing is almost completely out.
Well, I think it was very cutting edge, the radio program on a station that was drawing a younger audience, because I was definitely younger and listening to rock and roll music, and came across the show and I thought, this is interesting. This is talk. This is information. Didn't always agree with you, but I enjoyed the delivery of the information. I thought it was well done.
Well, I think my friends, thank you for that. I think my friends who didn't listen to it a lot because they had pretty much the same ideas, but oftentimes that listenership would tell me, I've never heard anybody with ideas like yours. And in many ways, it was unique. It was a very, very left-wing show, and probably the only one like it on commercial radio in the United States, which says more about commercial radio than it does about me. But the kind of show that I had, you're more likely to see on public and community station. I shouldn't say more likely to. That's the only place you'll hear, or you would have heard anything like that.
Right, right. Absolutely. So bouncing up back to your book, Eat the Rich and Other Interesting Ideas. I'm afraid to eat the rich because, you are what you eat.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't mind being rich, but I think it's the other things that come along with it. What are some of the other interesting ideas?
Well, that eat the rich goes back to the 18th century and Voltaire, who said, if you don't give the people bread, they will eat the rich, which was speaking towards economic inequality of those times. And in many ways, some things have changed, many ways they haven't. But again, I address the questions that confront our society. Are we going to be a democratic nation? Why are we continually involved in wars? Why did our white ancestors come here in the first place? That's the first essay, and actually my favorite. I mean, what was happening in Europe that drove, we usually think of the courageous spirit of the original explorers, but there were great social and economic reasons that they were pressed to go beyond their geography. And when I kept joking earlier about sex, it's actually a lot of it is based on the theories of a radical psychoanalyst, Wilhelm Reich, who I root a lot of my thoughts about who we are, and including myself, and how we function in this society.
Well, I look forward to picking up a copy of the book and seeing you in person at the Author Fair. Everyone else can do that as well. Come on down to the Author Fair on November 25th. Meet Peter Werbe. You're going to have both books there, I imagine.
I will, and I'd be pleased to inscribe them to people. And I want to thank you. I didn't realize that it was 20 authors. So this is a case of not saying thank you, but more saying I'm honored to be part of just 20 of us who are going to be there with our books. So thank you, Michael.
Well,
thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And we're pleased to have you and the 20 authors. It's right there on that Shop Small Saturday. We squeeze it in between Black Friday and Cyber Monday, all about capitalism, which I think you have some topics in your book about. Yeah. So we can combine it all.
Okay.
All right. We'll see Peter and the 20 authors on November 25th at the Rochester Author Fair.
I look forward to it. Thank you, Michael.